Gemma, could you do your presentation
Yeah,
first?
I'm here.
All right.
I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. Let me share my screen, make sure mine works as well.
Okay. This is the blessing of having a webinar and friends joining
Yeah.
in. We can cover one another.
Okay. Can everybody see that screen?
Yes, it's full screen now.
Good, it's working. Okay.
Go ahead.
Alhamdulillah. Let's just move you guys out the way, otherwise I won't be able to see what I'm saying. There we go. Okay, so this morning, I'm Gemma Ali. I am the founder of the Halal Animal Welfare Association here in the UK. My background is in livestock rearing and sciences, animal welfare, and I'm currently studying my PhD in agriculture as well. So I look at the halal supply chain before slaughter. So the majority of people have their expertise at slaughter and processing and packaging. Mine is before that part of the supply chain. Today I'm going to talk about the role of skilled labour in ensuring halal integrity in animal sciences and farming for our sector. So as an introduction, if we look at the definition of halal integrity, it basically ensures that all aspects of animal science and farming align with our Islamic dietary laws and ethical considerations that we are advised to adhere to within Islam, and treating Allah's other creations with respect as well, no matter what we use them for. So it's significant for us to have skilled labour because our trained professionals, they play a crucial role in maintaining halal standards throughout our supply chain, from rearing all the way to processing, even after that, during packaging, making sure that everything abides by the standards that we would like things to be produced to within the supply chain, and as well as from a consumer point of view as well. So the objectives of my presentation, inshallah, I will explain halal principles in animal farming, discuss the roles of skilled labour in maintaining halal integrity, highlight any challenges. I have a couple of case studies as well with countries that are doing this fairly well and getting a global reputation in doing so. So, halal animal science. So there are many hadith, and there's different parts of the Quran that actually speak about animal welfare and treatment and uses. So just some that are quite well known is, oh, you have believed, eat from the good things which were provided for you and be grateful to Allah if it is indeed him that you worship. So being grateful for the animals and also the crops that we grow and the food that we're able to make for that. And he's only forbidden to us our dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah as well. So these are the main, if you do not deviate to the other hadith and other parts of the Quran, then these two are the main points that we will follow. We are given specific species which we cannot consume, and the use of animal derivatives as well. So some non-Muslims are not aware that actually we can't eat things like gelatin from animals that aren't halal slaughtered, or if they have pork in them. This is always quite a surprise to my colleagues at work, because they will often buy sweets or some sort of confectionery, and I say, oh, I can't eat that, it's got beef in it, it's not halal, or it's got pork in it, and they're not aware of that. So but now awareness and education is reaching the non-Muslim markets as well. So when it comes to food production, if people want to reach our markets, whether it's farm level or confectionery or any other industry, they're now becoming more and more aware of this and changing production processes. We're also commanded to eat what is tayyib, so that wholesome, pure and clean food. A lot of the time this is referred to as like a food safety standard. But now the research papers mention tayyib as the animal rearing process as well. So what the animal's being fed, how often it's having medicines, what they're being used for. Some papers have animal welfare and tayyib as separate, some have it combined. I guess they can't make up their mind whether it is tayyib rearing or not. So, but a lot of the time it is a combined expression of having halal and tayyib meat to consume. So our key aspects of halal farming, animal welfare and ethical treatment, including mental and physical needs, need to be considered, as well as the use of medicine. So this is different in the country policy around the world, depending on where you are, and of course the demographic of the country and the conditions. So in the UK and in Europe, we can't have the routine use of antibiotics. And we are trying to work really hard to not contribute to antibiotic resistance. However, we have to understand that other countries around the world, in their production systems, this may be a necessity. But we need to try hard to actually have our skilled and trained professionals to house the animals and look after them and their husbandry as best as we can before we resort to using, routine medicines that are then down the line affecting the environment, affecting human and animal health. I'm sure we're all aware, especially after COVID times, we don't want that antibiotic resistance because then we can't treat our superbugs. But it's a case of just working with other production systems in other countries to maybe look at places and areas of animal husbandry we can improve, but sometimes it is a necessity. But it's not just about animals being treated as a commodity. They're not just a thing. Allah has taught us that animals have sentience, so we need to be considering this in our supply chain. We should ensure that our feeding guidelines have no haram or forbidden substances. There is halal certification for animal feed, I believe under CIMIC as well. In some cases, this is voluntary, but again, another thing that may come down to government policy, inshallah, not in your countries, but here in the UK, there has started to be a little bit of conversation about whether they're going to use pork proteins in animal feed, which obviously affects the halal market. So we then have to respond to these discussions and say why we can't have this in our supply chain. It's not in place at the moment, but it's just being aware that our government policies, maybe outside of your halal certification, can affect the processing of the animal, which actually down our supply chain doesn't fit in with our halal criteria. So we have to be quite transparent and active as well in looking at those government consultations. And of course, our proper slaughtering methods as per Islamic jurisprudence, which our halal monitoring committees and bodies will have a list of requirements that we have to adhere to for the halal slaughter to be accepted. So skilled labour in halal integrity itself. So by skilled labour, we mean individuals with specialised knowledge in halal animal husbandry, welfare of animals, handling, veterinary science, slaughtering, and of course that halal compliance. It goes all the way along the supply chain. So halal integrity and animal welfare, they can become compromised if staff are not trained correctly. Yes, you could have very skilled farmers that have been working on farms all their lives, but maybe they haven't got formal training in animal behaviour and welfare. It's just a case of it's part of their culture and community and they've grown up on a farm. But then they wouldn't necessarily know veterinary science in depth because, again, that's more of a specialised training where you go to vet school. And then for slaughtering, most countries will have a government policy where you need to be a competent slaughterer, you need to have a licence. But just because you maybe have gone through formal training or grown up on a farm and had handling experience, maybe you went to vet school, maybe you have a slaughterman licence, doesn't necessarily mean they have the halal jurisprudence knowledge 100% to be able to fulfill that whole supply chain. So it could become compromised along the supply chain if we don't have good collaboration with each other and understand each other's knowledge to get that full halal integrity from our skilled labour as well. So we have different categories of skilled professionals along our supply chain. So we will have our farmers ensuring ethical treatment and feeding practices, and understanding the rules around mixed production. So that's for non-Muslim countries. I sometimes get questions from farmers who have mixed production asking me what they should do if they rear pigs as well as maybe sheep that go for halal slaughter. So they need to understand those rules about what they can and can't do, how they should be separating that production. Can they put the sheep in that housing after the pigs? What's the protocol? How do they wash the animals before slaughter? How do they change their clothing? So this is more for the non-Muslim countries. But if those countries want to enter our halal market, they need to understand those rules that we have in place. And we, of course, have our vets who look after our welfare assurance, and also the health and safety of the meat that we consume and the animals along the supply chain. They will visit the farms, and of course, then when they're at the slaughter stage, they have to make sure that we are abiding by food safety standards, and there's not any biosecurity breaches as well. Here in the UK, we have welfare assurance schemes which ensure animal health and compliance. These are usually private companies, so around the world, other countries will have these in place as well. So over here in the UK, we have like the Red Tractor and RSPCA. So farmers can pay to join these schemes and have a set of standards, a bit like your the halal certification. You can then put their label or their advertisement on your product to say that you meet these certain welfare standards. Okay, this is now becoming more and more important here in the UK for halal consumers. They are now starting to look for Red Tractor and RSPCA or some sort of welfare standard for their halal meat. Whereas before they focused mainly on the halal certifier. As generations are getting younger, they're becoming more aware of animal issues in production, maybe due to social media. They're discussing this a lot more. So now they are actually looking for those labels and that welfare assurance for the life of the animal. I did like a presentation the other day, and I was talking about some of my research that I'm doing recently, and it's starting to show that actually younger generations that are non-Muslim are actually more concerned with how the animal is raised rather than how the slaughter has been done. So they're not actually concerned about whether their meat is halal or kosher or not if they're non-Muslim, but they are looking for those rearing practices. And actually a lot of younger consumers will buy the religious slaughtered meat because they have a feeling that it's more, it's cleaner and the animals are better looked after. It's becoming this slight shift in the next generations, which is a good thing for us, especially if it drives our halal market. But it's something that we should focus on with our skilled professionals, definitely. Our slaughterhouse workers are, of course, trained in Islamic slaughter methodology, and they will have their certificate of competency licenses as per country. And then we have our halal inspectors ensuring adherence to halal certification standards. These will differ depending on which certifier they choose to use along the supply chain. So religious and ethical responsibilities of our skilled labour. We need to ensure that all halal practices and principles are maintained at every stage of our supply chain. Sometimes we can have challenges here, especially if you are relying on maybe part of the chain being non-Muslim, or if there's some sort of break in the chain or some sort of regulation change. This can sometimes affect the principles and the halal integrity, and it may get to the end of the line and actually a product's not halal suitable, unfortunately. So we just have those ethical responsibilities to make sure that things are being kept within our religious guidelines along the way, and maybe not putting money over religious standards. Sometimes there may be those in the supply chain that think, oh, it's just on the cusp of what we need. let's just keep processing this particular line of product or service, but actually we should be quite picky about this and want that really in-depth halal integrity in our products, which alhamdulillah we seem to maintain. Of course, avoiding contamination with haram elements. Some non-Muslim countries may have slaughterhouses or production lines where pork is processed or things with alcohol in. We need to have that full washing of those areas. This is handled relatively well once we get to our slaughter stages and onwards. Of course, there's some countries that don't allow pork production and slaughter to be anywhere near non-halal. And of course, upholding honesty and transparency in our certification processes. We do unfortunately have some aspects of halal fraud and labelling misuse. This is where our skilled labour should have that God consciousness. Okay, at the end of the day, we are Muslim, we answer to Allah, so we should be looking after each other, especially where our food is concerned, because our food is our fuel, it's going inside our bodies. Now, this is becoming more and more apparent. So artificial intelligence is now being set to develop and help monitor halal processing. It could potentially replace humans in some aspects. So our training here needs to develop to give skilled persons an understanding of how AI is going to work, where it's going to be implemented. At the end of the day, AI is a set of algorithms. It is a robot. I use it quite often at work, and sometimes I think when I reread what it's written or research for me, I think, that's not quite what I was looking for. It is amazing. It's a very good innovation. But when it comes to our halal integrity, we need to make sure that these algorithms are picking up what we need. This is where we're going to reach a bit of a challenge, because I was saying the other day that you can do a degree in veterinary science, you can do a degree in farming. They will go through precision livestock farming. They will start to look at this technology and AI. But at the end of the day, you're not a programmer. Being a programmer and writing algorithms is a completely different industry. It's a completely different set of skills. So it's something to consider, and maybe start working with maybe the next generation who are studying these things to get them involved in the halal industry, so we can then have that robust integrity where we fully understand what AI is doing in our halal industry, and we have those experts as well to intervene when things aren't quite as we want them to. So rearing practices. So that ethical treatment of animals, so potentially the tayyib concept, or animal welfare on its own. So the most well-used hadith, verily Allah has prescribed excellence in all things. If you slaughter them well. So this is where our slaughter standards start coming into play, by treating the animal well when they go to slaughter. As soon as they reach those lorries and they start being handling to go to slaughterhouses, their environment is changing. There's new smells, new sounds. They are scared. So we have been taught in Islam to consider the changes that the animal's going through. You know, yes, we heard them, they're mute, we don't understand what they may be saying to each other or to us, but just to have that consideration, that we need to still be kind to them, even all the way up to slaughter. And when we slaughter them, quickly and painlessly as possible, with the name of Allah. And they should be given proper food and water and space during their lives. Many countries have their Animal Welfare Acts. Here we have Animal Welfare Act 2006. And we have many animal rights companies or corporations that will look at our production systems and the way we process livestock, and they will raise issues and bring them to light, so then we can change policy or create some sort of guidelines as well. Ideally, the act of slaughter should be no more stressful than handling on the farm. So this applies to all industries, halal or not. And it has been proven. There is a paper, which maybe I can share after the presentation, where they have proved that it is possible to carry out slaughter of an animal with the same stress level of actually handling them on a farm. Okay, so there might be initial spike of stress levels measured by chemicals or heart rate, but they can stay the same and not be elevated at slaughter. There is ways to do this, which slaughtermen and animal handlers will be trained in. So those feeding guidelines again, so the prohibition of haram ingredients, so swine-derived feed, blood meal and non-halal additives. There is an emphasis on natural and organic feed, depending on the production system. Generally, sheep and cattle, their meat quality is better and their well-being if they're grazing on grass. Obviously, you may not have the weather or the terrain to do such things, so there are alternatives in place. Halal should aim for the higher standard of this. If they're a grazing animal, we should be allowing them to graze for the majority of their life. It improves their health and welfare, and it improves our meat quality as well. So the housing standards, these should give a minimisation of animal stress and humane handling. They should be allowed to perform natural behaviours within their housing. So that is a consideration per species, depending on the age and size of the animal. They may need separate housing, especially when it comes to breeding seasons. The males may need to be moved, or as it causes them additional stress if they're right next to the females. And compiling with those ethical farming practices as well, following those animal welfare acts. Specialised training is needed to understand how to manage animals without causing unnecessary stress. I think the halal industry would start to benefit from training in maybe animal behaviour, welfare, ethics, and sentience of animals, specific to the species to actually understand how they behave. So there was a study done where they were looking at how animals react to blood, especially in a slaughterhouse, because if it was us as humans and we were put into a slaughterhouse and we saw somebody else being slaughtered, we don't like the sight of blood. We get very scared. Some people will have panic attacks. When actually animals don't actually respond to the sight of blood. They don't know what it is. They don't seem to have any sort of recognition for this on the offset. They're more looking at how the animal behaves, which is why in Islam we are given the guidance and the command to not let animals see each other being slaughtered. It's not a nice thing to see. They pick up from pheromones, the hormones, the behavior, the sounds of the animal, but blood itself they don't seem to react to, which is an interesting concept. So the training. So there are many courses on Islamic jurisprudence relating to animal husbandry and slaughtering. Slaughtering is the main focus, and the welfare at slaughter be develop a little bit further for those who go and actually study agriculture and farming. Maybe we could start including halal slaughtering practices into that. When you're in a non-Muslim country, obviously this is harder to do. It will be the one-off talk or presentation. But then some of the Muslim countries may have this a little bit more developed, but it's definitely something that is important to have in those training programs. That hands-on training for halal certification processes, and training in animal welfare and husbandry, including behaviour. So having a bit more hands-on training as well. There's lots of online courses that will discuss these and run through the requirements, including your welfare assurance and quality standards. But having hands-on training is very, very different, and seeing things face to face rather than just being online. So we have our existing certification programs. So our halal certifiers and councils, they offer training in halal theory and slaughter. And there's training in physical animal husbandry and handling. This generally could be a specialised subject outside of this. Things are improving. The problem is it's very hard to get a large number of people to go to a slaughterhouse and watch a slaughter or be on a farm, because they are a production process. They have certain protocols, especially having outside people inside those areas for biosecurity control, also just the general health and safety of having people in those places. But maybe it's something that we could work with and collaborate with farms and slaughterhouses and universities or training providers to actually have a bit more hands-on training. And that continuous education. So it's important for refresher training slaughterhouse workers and farmers. Things are changing all the time. There's new discoveries. I know some people think, oh, animal scientists, you just punch out research that you find and have this idea, but actually some of it is integral to actually changing our processes. And having those regular audits by halal authorities as well help to uphold our standards. So when we need to look at our certification quality assurances, of course, we have our halal certification bodies that do this. We also have global standards such as ISOs, your CIMIC standards, GSO. These are used especially for those non-Muslim countries who want to export into Muslim countries or reach out into the halal market. They can abide by these standards to allow international trade, especially if production or welfare standards are lower than that country. So, for example, Brazil exporting to the UK, if they can show that they abide by these quality assurance standards, then we will allow that international trade. And it's about being inclusive and allowing that import and export, especially to meet supply and demand as well. But again, that monitoring compliance, so regular audit checked by trained inspectors along the supply chain, and the use of modern tracking technologies. There's a big uptake now of blockchain for traceability, where it's a huge database, and we're now using technology to input each stage of our supply chain, so you can trace back the quality. You can't have a break in the chain. It's helping to stop halal fraud and labelling fraud. You can see exactly where something's come from. So maybe if there's a disease outbreak or some cross-contamination, you can see the step of the chain before. So blockchain is becoming a really important technology. And that collaboration with farm welfare assurance schemes as well. To get that full farm to fork assurance. The consumers are looking for this now. They're not just looking for the halal stamp anymore. So challenges, if I just bring this up for you. So shortage of skilled labour. So having a lack of trained professionals in halal farming and slaughtering. As generations are moving forward, this is a less sought after field. It'd be interesting to hear from maybe some of the others in the industry, especially in your halal, like in your Muslim nations. How much do the next generation look for halal careers? What parts of the halal industry are they going to work into? So if we're also in a demand of an industry that has that demand for technology training as well as that skilled Islamic knowledge for that halal integrity, there's a lot of scope here. I personally am worried that the next generation, they don't want to learn slaughter, they don't want to learn farming. These are hard industries, they are long hours, they are mucky, they maybe don't pay so well, so they're not really seeking these skills. So then we are relying more and more on non-Muslims to produce our food, but maybe there's some way we can get the youth on a drive to go and actually study halal sciences and study halal farming, but also those that are interested in AI and technology and the Islamic knowledge, somehow bringing them all together to keep their industry going so it doesn't fade out in 10, 20 years time. Another challenge, of course, is mislabeling and fraud. So unfortunately, we do have products that are falsely claimed to be halal or the production method. We do need stricter regulatory enforcement along the chain. However, those are concerned with handing things over to governments, especially in non-Muslim countries, because we need still a bit of control around this. Too much red tape, too much legislation makes things difficult for us. But our standards ourselves, having that harmonisation as well, can help to enforce this. Unfortunately, we do have inconsistency still along different countries and supply chains. So ideally, we want to work for that unified global halal standard, working with each other. Obviously, some things are influenced by demographic, but working around these with each other. Some example of those AI technologies, just in case anyone was wondering, they use things like sensors to monitor animal behaviour. They will it looks at whether they've been feeding or not. They'll have collars on, or CCTV cameras monitoring algorithms of how much they ate, how often they ate, how much they moved, have they got lameness. It could be breeding, so you can attach devices to see if they're going to give birth, and you get a text message rather than having to sit in a field. The algorithms can detect haram substances in our production lines, and also that blockchain as well for that traceability. So these are all being developed, and the technology is developing very, very quickly. So it's a case of aligning those algorithms and standards within the robot versus our halal integrity. Some have the view that the human eye is best, and we still need human involvement, which, yes, is a given. And obviously, implementing technology can be expensive as well. So it's just things to consider going forward. So some case studies. From a Muslim perspective, Malaysia is known for its rigorous halal certification through JAKIM, and they export a significant amount of meat. Animal welfare on the farm is relatively good standards because they follow World Animal Welfare Organizations, as well as having good country policy themselves. They have their trained slaughtermen that follow those strict halal procedures, which ensure animals do not have unnecessary stress. And they comply with global halal standards as well. So they will align with Gulf Cooperation Council and OIC as well. This increases consumer trust. So generally, if a halal consumer hears that it came from Malaysia, they have that reputation and that standard that the halal products are fully in line with Islam. And this gives a good consumer reputation, especially for export opportunities, but also in the tourism sector. More and more Muslims, we want to visit Malaysia because we have a very good halal lifestyle while we are traveling out in Malaysia. New Zealand, so this is becoming a non-Muslim country kind of standard for halal production. So they have good animal welfare standards, and they have a robust halal monitoring system. So their national certifiers will work together in harmony to actually give a country halal standard. So where a lot of countries will have individual certifiers to export, they have a country halal standard. Okay, so this allows successful exports for halal meat, and it's widely accepted as well. So they are a good example. Actually, Dr. Awal has actually just been to New Zealand, so he will know more about that subject than I do. Maybe he can enlighten us all if he's not stuck in an airport somewhere. And the EU, UK and Australia as well, we have good animal welfare standards, some of the highest in the world at policy level. Okay, so that's a government level. And we also have halal certification, which is recognised for export. However, we do have challenges in the supply chain and with halal fraud within our countries. So I think we'd benefit from more collaboration and better labelling for consumer trust as well. And just having a bit more compassion and integrity within each other as well, actually domestically within the country, to get these standards even better. So I bring this up. So the future of skilled labour, so technology advancements, again, that blockchain and artificial intelligence and quality control, maybe the halal certifiers or those that provide training can start to get some more technology experts about this, explain what it does. So integration of halal training in agricultural and veterinary sciences curriculums, and collaborate with global universities, Muslim and non-Muslim. And you know what, it doesn't even need to be at degree level. I have talented students at even diploma level, so the ages of 16 to 18, that work and grow up on farms. They want to know more about this halal industry because inevitably when they inherit their farms from their parents, they want to reach into a halal market and make their businesses better. So having some of that halal training, especially in the non-Muslim sector, can be beneficial. Of course, we do have like UNISA Brunei, who have Halal and Tayyib Research Centre. There's places in Indonesia and also Malaysia. But I think it could be global collaborations in education sectors as well, especially if this industry is going to grow more and more. And we have our growing demand of halal products, so expanding obviously to Europe, USA and Asia more and more. So we need those skills professionals in all these countries to meet those rising halal consumer demands for next generations as well. So just key takeaways about skilled labour is essential for halal integrity from farm to table, and having training and certification. We need to keep expanding these and updating them, and having our regulatory bodies to standardise and enforce halal compliance to try and stop that fraud. Strengthening partnerships, I'd say, is one of my main recommendations, especially between like governments, religious authorities, and academic institutions as well, and having those international training centres as well. I know it's hard enough to try and collaborate all of the halal certification bodies, so trying to work on halal training centres as well is a whole another project, but maybe inshallah in time we can do this. And there's my contact details if you would like to get in touch with me.
All right. Thank you very much, Gemma, Sister Gemma.
Yes.
Very interesting coverage. And I guess, Nadia, you are keen to then talk about Aussie's the case study. Gemma didn't mention anything about Aussie's what do you call that, the slaughtering sector, right? So I'm sure you have some good things there that you can share afterwards. Yeah, unfortunately, me too. I'm more keen on New Zealand because I did visit the New Zealand industry when I first started the journey in halal. I didn't have the chance to visit Australia, so I don't know. Hopefully, you can share more about that, Nadia. But the other thing, Gemma, before you I'm also sharing your concern about the next generation, right? And
Mm.
you had earlier shared with me the what do you call that? The survey that you wanted to then put as a study for your next presentation, international, what do you call that? Seminar or something like that in Bosnia, right?
Yeah.
So you still have time if you need more survey results, survey respondents. Perhaps you can share the link at the message, and you can get more
Yes, I can do
respondents.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could
I think
could
I will eventually do a research paper with the next generation to ask them if they are willing to work in the halal sector. The problem is, if you start to survey students, especially at school level, there's safeguarding and parental controls that need to be given. So it becomes harder to ask them. But inshallah, I can find a way to do this on a mass scale to find out the interest of working in our sector.
that would be great. So without further